Hello and welcome. My name's George and my channel is all about helping you get the most out of Logic Pro so that you can produce and record your best music in your home studio. Today we're going to be looking at applying reverb to a lead vocal using the Space Designer plugin in Logic Pro. So let's dive in. So I've got my lead vocal right here, and at the moment I have some compression applied that we went over last week. So please check out that video if you haven't already. And we've got a little bit of EQ as well, but we don't have any reverb or delay or any spatial effects on our vocal just yet. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Now, when it comes to applying reverb to a lead vocal, I usually like to use two different reverbs for this. I like to use one shorter length reverb, which is going to have a shorter decay. And then I also like having one longer reverb, which is going to linger around a little bit longer. So I'll show you what I mean by that. So let's start with loading in our shorter reverb. Now, one thing to talk about is how you actually go about applying your reverb to your vocal. One way of doing it would be to put the plugin directly on your track the same way you would your compression or your EQ. So that would mean clicking here, going down to reverb, and then Space Designer. But you have a little bit of less control doing it this way. If you were to apply it this way, which is as an insert, you would change the amount of reverb using the wet signal here. So the wet signal being the reverb signal and the dry signal being just your dry vocal sound. The more preferred method is to set up your reverb on a bus track or aux using a send. Doing this is going to allow me to send multiple tracks to that same reverb. For example, if I have 4 different vocal tracks, I don't have to put one reverb plugin on each one of those tracks. I can simply put one reverb on my aux or bus track and send each individual vocal tracks to that one reverb. So this is also going to free up some computer resources because you're only loading in one plugin instead of 4. And then this way as well, using the send, I can dial in the amount of reverb on each one of those vocal tracks individually. So I don't need to open up the plugin each time and change the wet signal. I can just quickly do that from the mixer using the send. And I'll demonstrate that in a second here. So let's close our Space Designer and let's remove it from our track. And let's create a bus. So to do that, first I'm going to open up my mixer just so you can see visually what's happening. And I'm going to go to my lead vocal track, which is here. And under sends, I'll click here and go to bus. And now here you can see all my bus tracks, and currently none of them are being used. So I'm going to go and select bus 1. And now you see that that created a new track here, currently called aux 1. And the input is bus 1 here, and my send is bus 1 over here. So this is where I'm going to put my reverb plugin on. So now I'm going to click here, go to reverb, Space Designer, and I'm going to choose mono to stereo. And what I like to do too, just to make sure, I'm going to click up here on this button just to make sure that my aux track is indeed in stereo. You'll notice these 2 little circles here. That means the track is stereo. And on my vocal track, you'll see just the 1 circle, which means my vocal is mono, which is fine for our vocal track. So first off, I'm going to rename my aux track, and I'll just call this short verb. So before we get into some of the settings of the Space Designer, I want to show you where you can access some of the presets. And now the presets are going to be a great starting place for any of the reverb settings. So I suggest that you start there. So if you go up here where it says user default, here you get all the list of the different reverb presets. And you'll see it's organized based on the different spaces. So you have large spaces, medium spaces, and small spaces. And we're going to start with small spaces. And then you have different types of rooms, halls, different types of reverbs, plate reverbs, spring reverbs, and different spaces as well. Now, for shorter vocal reverbs, I tend to like plate reverbs. So let's see what we have here. And you can tell we have a couple presets called vocal ambience, golden vocals, vocal plate. And you'll also notice these numbers here. And these correspond to the time of the reverb. So 0.3 seconds all the way to 1.3 seconds. Now, for shorter vocal reverb, I usually like anywhere from 0.7 seconds up to 1.5 seconds. So why don't we start with this 1.3 second nice plate and see how that sounds. So in our Space Designer plugin here, you'll notice this little kind of wave file here. And this is what's called an impulse response file. So this is an actual recording of reverb found in this particular space. So right now we're using this nice small plate. And if, for example, I choose a large space, huge room, you'll see here it has a different impulse response. So this is what's called convolution reverb. So it's blending an impulse response with your material, in this case, our vocal. And then so it's making it sound as if, in this case, we were in a huge room. So I'm quickly going to go back to our small plate. Now, when we talked about earlier about putting the plugin on the actual track and dialing it in using this wet knob, well, since we're on an auxiliary track, I want this wet to be all the way up, and I want the dry signal to be all the way down, because my dry signal is going to be coming from my lead track, and then the wet is just going to be on this aux track that I created. So we don't need any of the dry signal in here, and we might as well turn the wet signal all the way up. So right now, if I were to press play, you would hear that there's no reverb on our vocal yet. When I look in your eyes, still just the dry signal. And that's because we haven't yet sent any signal over to our bus track right here. So that happens on this send here, this little wheel here. And if I click and drag in the circle, you notice this little green appears and fills out. So that determines how much signal is getting sent to here. And that signal is going to pass through the Space Designer plugin, and that's when we're going to hear reverb. So I'll press play and I'll slowly increase the amount that I send here, and we should start hearing reverb on our track. When I look in your eyes, I see you slipping away. It kills me inside, don't wanna hurt you this way. So we now have reverb applied to our track. So you might stumble on a preset that sounds great right out of the box, but let's look at a few parameters that you might want to consider changing on our Space Designer plugin. The most obvious ones are going to be the length and the size. So when we loaded in the preset, you could see it was 1.3 seconds, and that's how long our length is. So we can shorten this length just by dialing this back, and you can see now we're at 494 milliseconds. And if we go all the way back to max, we're at 1.3. So if we want to go beyond 1.3 seconds, then we have to increase the size here. So if we do, let's say 150, then you see it recalculates and our length is now almost 2 seconds. And if I play this, you'll hear that it sounds quite a bit longer. When I look in your eyes, I see you slipping away. It kills me inside, don't wanna hurt you this way. So now we have a much longer reverb than what we started with. So I'm going to go back to 100%. So I'm going to press play, and I'm going to play with the length a little bit and see how I like that. I might increase the amount of reverb we are sending just so it's a little bit more obvious for now, and then I'll dial that back a little bit later. When I look in your eyes, I see you slipping away. It kills me inside, don't wanna hurt you this way. When you're here by my side, I feel you slipping away. Okay, so I'm liking that. So it's just giving us a bit of a space initially, and then it's getting out of the way pretty quickly. And now the next setting I'm going to look at is pre-delay. So pre-delay affects how quickly the reverb kicks in. So right now it's at 0 milliseconds, so it's going to kick in right away. So increasing the pre-delay can actually help your vocal stay nice and upfront so that the reverb isn't kind of washing over the vocal right at the beginning. The dry vocal can come through, and then the reverb can come slightly afterwards. So if I increase this pre-delay quite a bit, you'll hear that it's going to start sounding a little bit like an echo.
When I look in your eyes, I see you slipping away. It kills me inside, don't wanna.
So that sounds a little bit unnatural, right? So I'm going to pull this pre-delay back closer to 0 until it starts to sound a little bit more natural.
When I look in your eyes, I see you slipping away. It kills me inside, don't wanna hurt you this way. When you're here by my side, I feel you slipping away. Tell you a lie, I just need you to stay. You're slipping away, slipping away, slipping away.
So now the reverb sounds a bit more cohesive with the dry signal, but it's not overpowering it right at the beginning. There's a little bit of that delay before the sound starts getting colored by the reverb. Now, another setting we can look at in the Space Designer is this output EQ. So there's actually a built-in EQ into our reverb plugin. And remember, this is just going to be EQing the reverb. It's not going to be EQing our dry signal, so our actual vocal track. It's just going to be EQing the reverb that's coming out of it. So a lot of times you might want to filter out some of the low frequencies as well as the high frequencies. So let's see what that sounds like.
When I look in your eyes, I see you slipping away. It kills me inside, don't wanna hurt you this way. When you're here by my side, I feel you slipping away. Tell you a lie, I just need you to stay. You're slipping away, slipping away, slipping away.
So I'm just filtering out some of the higher frequencies of the reverb there, and I find that a little bit more pleasing. I'm going to do the same thing for the low end.
When I look in your eyes, I see you slipping away. It kills me inside, don't wanna hurt you this way. When you're here by my
And EQing your reverb like this, in a lot of cases, will allow you to be able to add even more reverb without you start getting that harsh sound that you might get with the higher frequencies. So now that I'm happy with this, I'm going to bring my send amount back down to 0, and I'm going to slowly bring my send back up and dial in my reverb amount that way.
When I look in your eyes, I see you slipping away. It kills me inside, don't wanna hurt you this way.
Okay, I'm happy with that. So let's move on to our longer reverb. I'll go ahead and close this one. And once again, we'll create another bus for this. So I'm going to go below my bus 1, click here. And my next available bus is bus 2. Click on that. Once again, you see that it created a new aux track. I'm going to rename this long verb. And one thing to quickly mention is I'll generally always leave these aux tracks, the fader, at 0. There's no need to adjust the level of the reverb using the faders because I'm doing that using the amount of sends that I'm sending to those tracks. The only time I would ever really do anything with these faders is, for example, if I wanted to automate them, if I wanted to mute all the reverb on my track all at once, then I could just automate this fader to go down to 0 and that would just kill all the reverb on all the tracks. So let's go ahead and add another space designer. And once again, I'm just going to click this button here to make sure that's stereo. And now for a longer reverb, we'll just open this up and let's go to large spaces. And how about we look at halls? So this would be like placing our singer in a large concert hall. And for larger reverbs, I usually like anywhere from 2 to 3, maybe 3.5 seconds, depending on the song. And why don't we try this smooth vocal hall? 2.7 seconds. Once again, I'm going to bring my wet signal all the way up to 0, and I'm going to mute my short reverb for the moment. So to do that, I'm just going to turn off the send. You can see that's now grayed out. So again, right now, we're not going to hear any reverb.
When I look in your eyes.
But when I start increasing the send, that's going to send it to bus 2, which is going to pass the signal through the space designer, and that's when we're going to hear our reverb. So let's send a little bit there to start.
When I look in your eyes, I see you slipping away.
So you can hear that's a much longer reverb than what we had for our short reverb setting. I'll play a little bit more of that and see if we want to adjust the length at all.
It kills me inside, don't wanna hurt you this way. When you're here by my side, I feel you slipping away. Tell you a lie, I just need you to stay. You're slipping away, slipping away, slipping away.
Okay, I think that length works pretty good. I'm just going to adjust the pre-delay once again.
When I look in your eyes, I see you slipping away. It kills me inside, don't wanna hurt you this way. When you're here by my side, I feel you slipping away. Tell you a lie, I just need you to stay.
So I went with a slightly longer pre-delay for the longer reverb. And again, that's just so we don't cover up the beginning of our vocal with all this big reverb sound. And we can go to our EQ once again, and maybe we'll filter out a little bit of the lows and the highs the same way we did before.
When I look in your eyes, I see you slipping away. It kills me inside, don't wanna hurt you this way. When you're here by my side, I feel you slipping away. Tell you a lie, I just need you to stay. You're slipping away, slipping away, slipping away.
Okay, great. And now I'm going to back off our reverb again on our send. And once again, I'll just dial that back in.
When I look in your eyes, I see you slipping away. It kills me inside, don't wanna hurt you this way. When you're here by my side, I feel you slipping away.
Now I generally have the longer reverb a little bit less than my shorter reverb. And the idea behind that is the shorter reverb is kind of going to be the main one. And then the longer one is just to have kind of this lingering tail at the very end. So now I'll bring my shorter reverb back in. I'll listen to the two together, bring in our track, and see if we need to make any adjustments. Usually when you bring in the track in, you'll see that it soaks up a lot of the reverb and you might need to add a little bit more, or you'll know if you added too much and it's time to pull some back. So let's see what this sounds like.
When I look in your eyes, I see you slipping away.
And with the track.
When I look in your eyes, I see you slipping away. Kills me inside, don't wanna hurt you this way. When
So I'm pretty happy with that. So I hope that gives you some ideas on how you can start applying reverb to your own vocals. You can apply these same concepts to any reverb plugin. And once you have your small and larger reverb plugins set up on buses, you can send any other tracks to these same reverbs, such as synths, guitars, anything you'd like. If you have any other questions about Reverb or Space Designer, please feel free to leave those in the comments. And if you want to improve and speed up your workflow in Logic Pro, don't forget to download my free Logic Pro X hotkey cheat sheet by following the link in the description below. I hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll see you in the next one.